Hi guys, it's Shafman from Shafman TV. I hope you're fantastic. And today we're looking at, will Saudi Arabia and Iran go to war? Pretty serious topic. So, in order for us to understand the enmity between the two countries, we have to look at some historical facts. First of all, there's often an analysis in the Middle East that all these countries are all Muslim and all the same. And that's rubbish. They're not. They are completely different in many ways. Okay, so Iran is a Persian country, okay? Saudi is an Arab country. So the Arabs and the Persians are completely different culturally. They speak a different language. Iranians speak Farsi Persian, and the Arabs speak Arabic, and they've got completely different societies. Okay, Iran has had a parliament for over 100 years. It's had a history of democratic movements. It's in a way, and I'm not being critical of Saudi Arabia, but a more sophisticated society. It's got a society where it's got, more democracy, because there is a functioning parliament in Iran, as bad as that parliament is, but there is a functioning parliament in Iran, and there is a sense of liberalism in Iran which isn't in Saudi Arabia. Now, I'm not criticizing individual Saudis for that. I'm just saying, generally speaking, Saudi Arabia is a different type of country. It's definitely more religious. It's Sunni. It's a Sunni Islamic country. Iran is a Shia Islamic country, and it's basically a Wahhabi country with a very puritanical view of Islam. And again, this isn't every single individual Saudi or to criticize individuals. This is just a fact. So the two countries are very different. Iran's more liberal, shall we say, and Saudi is definitely more conservative. And so in this regard, the two countries culturally are hugely different as well. Okay, and often the Saudis view Shia Islam as being basically like heretical. Okay, it's basically viewed as contradicting one of the main points of Sunni Islam, which is that the Prophet Muhammad is the last prophet, and the worshipping of 12 shrines in Iran, Iraq, and other places is seen as being anti-Islamic. Okay, so many Saudis and Saudi religious establishment view Iran as, like heretics. Very bad, very bad. On the flip side, many Shias, not many, but there are Shias in Iran who view themselves as the real guardians of Islam, the real descendants of the Prophet Muhammad, and the real Muslims. Okay, and they view the Saudis as being fake, as being American stooges, as being just rich, fat, indolent Arabs, basically. Okay, so this is the basis of the enmity between the two. And I think also, like the average person in Iran and Saudi are, busy with their lives, but this, there is a notion in Saudi and in Iran that the other is somehow below them, so that's obviously a massive generalization, but I believe that characteristic is accurate. And especially with the Iranians, they believe that they are better than Arabs, and especially better than Saudis, just viewing them as, so no more than American stooges. And on the flip side, the Saudis viewing the Iranians as, a nuisance and not Muslims at all, and, arrogant for speaking their own language, etc. So that's a bit of a historical basis. I suppose the first major event is going to be in the Iran-Iraq war, where the Saudi Arabians funded Iraq. Okay, funded a Arab country, Iraq, against Iran. Okay, so that's one event, but there has been a general theme happening that since the revolution in Iran in 1979, Iran has made an attempt to separate itself from the United States, and has also successfully spread Shia Islam around the region, right into Africa, into Lebanon, into Syria, into various other places. You've got around 10% of the Islamic world is are Shia Muslims. And this was a stated policy objective of the Iranians after the revolution, to create Shia militias, to have influence in different countries. And this is probably the major reason for Saudi Arabians' enmity towards Iran. They resent the perceived Iranian power in the region. So, for example, in Iraq, 60-65% of Iraqis are actually Shias. Iran, by all accounts, controls Iraq. Culturally, economically, definitely is massively important in Iraq, and politically as well. In Syria, the Assad regime, Assad is an Alawite, that's a branch of Islam, and basically, without the help of the Iranians and also the Russians, Assad would be long gone before now. In Lebanon, Hezbollah, hugely important group in the government there as well. You know, they were created by Iran. That's just a historical fact, okay? And that's obviously another reason why Israel are deeply concerned about Iran. You know, in Bahrain, you've got the majority of the population are Iranian, okay? You've got other spheres of influence, like in Afghanistan, which Iran has. They share a relatively common language. Dari is very similar to Farsi, give or take some words, which a lot of the people in Afghanistan speak. So basically, you've got Iran, which has these sphere of influences, which are, you know, on the one side, and on the other side, you have Saudi Arabia, who have a different policy objective completely, and their policy objective happens to be the same as Israel and happens to be the same as the United States, and that is to contain Iran, to contain Shia militias, to wrestle control of what they consider to be their sphere of influence. So, for example, in Iraq, Saudi Arabia have got like a cooperation council in Iraq now, and they're attempting to wrestle control away from Iran. And, you know, they've accused Iran of terrorism, they've accused Iran of funding the Houthi rebels in Yemen, which isn't true in my opinion. You know, they've obviously accused Iran, which is hugely hypocritical, of funding terrorism globally. And if you do a little bit of research about the Saudis, you'll see that that's a very hypocritical position. So we've come to this point where Saudi policy, as I say, Israeli policy, United States policy have all aligned against Iran. Saudis have criticized Obama's nuclear deal with Iran, saying it wasn't harsh enough and it should have been harsher. Trump's obviously supported bin Salman's recent purge, and he's hugely supportive of the Saudis, probably due to all the weapons which they're buying, and probably due to the fact that he believes that their interests and the Saudis are aligned. So this begs the question, what's going to happen? And is a war possible between Saudi Arabia and Iran? And I'm talking about a direct war. Now, everything's possible, okay? But in my opinion, it's highly unlikely that Saudi Arabia or Israel are going to try to attack Iran. Now, Mohammed bin Salman is quoted as saying that we're looking to fight the war in Iran, on Iranian soil, not on Saudi Arabian soil. And what he means by that is that he doesn't want a proxy war. He doesn't want a proxy war on the border with Saudi Arabia, and he doesn't want a war, a civil war or some type of war in Saudi Arabia. He wants to push that as far away as possible, and that obviously makes sense from their perspective, but what is the likelihood of that happening? My opinion is very small, and the major reason stems from the Iranian Revolution in 1979, where a stated objective, as I've mentioned, of the Islamic movement was to create Shia militias independent of Iran, autonomous of Iran, with their own businesses, their own money, their own weapons, their own command structure, who can fight independently of whether the Iranian system survives or not. And in that regard, Hezbollah are the most famous, obvious choice. But you've also got huge numbers of Shia militias, especially in Iraq, who would be willing to fight against Saudi and would be willing to cause lots and lots and lots and lots of destruction, and actually believe that Shias are the rightful owners and the rightful heirs to the Prophet Muhammad, the real Muslims, and would be willing to fight to the death. Now, policymakers in Washington and in Riyadh know this. Ignoring all the hot air, ignoring all the propaganda, they know this. They know that for them to attack Iran is impractical. It's very difficult for them to do so. One bomb on Iran, Hezbollah are going to attack Israel. The Iranians have said it. They're going to bomb Saudi. Okay? So, in that context, there's a lot of hot air, and we need to cut through the rhetoric and understand that the Iranian system and the Saudi system, if they're going to fall and change, is highly likely to be an internal change. It's highly unlikely that, for example, Israel and Saudi Arabia are going to be able to remove the government or remove the regime in Iran. It's impractical. Iran's a very sophisticated country. It's a large country. It's a nationalistic country that has an enmity towards Arabs. Okay, this is a fact. I'm not being facetious or being funny, but it's true. And this is a nationalistic country with a 3,000 to 4,000 year history who are going to fight. And all the Shia militias and all the 120, 130 million Shias who exist around the world, especially concentrated in the Middle East, are going to fight. So the policy objective to try and contain Iran through military means isn't going to work. Okay, so I make a prediction. Moving forward, we're going to see skirmishes between Saudi and Iran. We're going to see proxy skirmishes between Iran and Saudi. We're going to see the GCC and Saudi's allies critical of Iran. We're going to see an attempt to squeeze Iran in its spheres of influence and to try and put pressure on the Iranian system, which is struggling economically. Iran's struggling economically, there's no doubt about it. The low price of oil and mismanagement has caused a big problem in Iran. They've got hyperinflation. The banking system isn't really integrated into the international banking system. You've got an import economy which doesn't have enough foreign currency, and you have people economically struggling in Iran, or a larger population than Saudi, for example, and not as rich. Okay, it doesn't drill as much oil each day, half the amount of oil that the Saudis do, and a bit less. So, I think this is going to continue, and I think also the Saudis and the Israelis and the United States are going to try to foment ethnic division in Iran. I think this is a more likely avenue where the Iranian system is going to be attacked through ethnic division, because like maybe the Kurds, maybe the Arabs in the south, they're going to try, like they've done in the north of Iraq, they're going to try to fund with weapons or with influence or with propaganda or whatever ethnic groups in Iran to try and cause issues for the Iranian regime. Now, how that's going to play itself out is going to be really interesting, but a direct attack on Iran is a suicide mission, because the Iranian regime will respond, and will respond with a fire. I'm not saying it's going to win any type of war, but it's going to respond. So, very interesting times moving forward. I advise all listeners to cut through the noise and look at the practical element of the policies and of the hot air and of the noise that's going on, and what practically can happen, and and try to also understand that this is not a homogeneous region. Try to understand that these are different countries with different objectives, and try to understand some of the historical reasons for them as well. So I hope that's been a useful video. Thanks a lot for watching. I know it was quite long. If you can subscribe to my channel, I'd be really delighted to have you as a subscriber and to upload more videos. And I'd just like to thank you very much for watching and wish you a great day. Thank you.